All right, welcome everyone. This is episode 3 of the Tide Hoops History Summer Podcast Series, and we have been able to take the show on the road. I'm your host, Michael Southern, and this is an exciting day for us. We actually had great timing. We have former Alabama great Melvin Cheatum here. He's actually in town this weekend because your daughter is here for a volleyball recruiting trip. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, again, Melvin, welcome back. I guess what I want to ask you is, how does it feel to be back on the court here at Coleman?
Well, Michael, it feels a bit weird. 33 years later, I think they made quite a few improvements as I look around the facilities. But it's still something about when my feet hit this hardwood that I just get that bounce under my feet. I feel like I probably could walk right over there and start dunking a basketball again.
Well, I saw you out in the court earlier with Steven, so I think you probably could. I don't think that'd be a problem whatsoever. We were talking earlier. I was in school the same time you were in school, so I was only really the same year, but 1 year behind, as I mentioned, on the 5-year plan. So there were a lot of games, and I believe the student section, we were over there at the time, but saw you guys play a lot. Got a lot to talk about as far as those great teams from the 80s and things like that. But I guess maybe let's just start at the beginning. Now, you played high school basketball in Louisiana, is that right?
That's correct.
So now where was it that you played and how long in Louisiana?
I played 4 years at a school called Winsboro High School. It doesn't exist anymore. They changed the name to the Franklin Parish Patriots. And of course, a lot of the trophies and accolades that we won as team units are no longer there. They retired my jersey. It's not there anymore. Even the school colors changed. They changed from black and gold to red, white, and blue.
Okay.
So, I had some pretty good talent to come through there. Guys like Booger McFarland.
Oh,
football.
Booger, yeah, from football.
Yeah, we had but they all look up to me as a big brother. Like you were the blueprint of what we need to do and the path that we needed to take to try to get to the next level.
So let me ask this: how did you get on the radar of Coach Sanderson in Alabama basketball recruiting?
Well, it's a funny story. Coming out of high school, I had 72 Division I basketball scholarship offers, and had schools from UConn
okay,
to all across the country recruiting me. And one of the schools that recruited me, actually the school that recruited me the hardest, was the University of Texas. And I have friends that went on to sign with the University of Texas and play there, like Travis Mays, Lance Blanks, Joey Wright. And there was a coach by the name of Greg Polinsky, who was an assistant coach at Alabama when I came in. But at that time, he was assistant coach to Tom Penders at the University of Texas.
Oh, okay.
And so Coach Polinsky, Coach P, he had drawn a beeline on me as their number one priority recruit. Like, you got to get this guy. And I was kind of flying under the radar. I didn't play AAU basketball. And it wasn't until I had an opportunity, Sonny Smith gave me an opportunity to come to the Nike camp in Princeton, New Jersey. And it was a deal where they paid the airfare for me and took care of everything that I needed in order for me to go there and participate in that camp. And then at that point, the rest was history. That's when all the schools discovered Melvin Cheatum. And then the floodgates opened all across the SEC and other schools. And I'd always been a fan of SEC sports. Growing up, I would watch Saturday. I would always try to find the Auburn Tigers to watch them play college football. There was a guy, a dynamic running back by the name of Bo Jackson, that made college football really exciting for me to watch.
Wow.
And so as a result, that was one of my recruiting trips that I agreed to take.
Oh, it was to Auburn?
To go to Auburn.
Okay.
And inevitably, Coach Sanderson and Coach Polinsky derailed that for Auburn. They weren't. I came to Alabama before I took that trip, and they persuaded me not to even go visit. And Coach at that time, Sonny Smith was a coach, and that's not information. That's not news that any coach really wants to get. Like if there's your number one guy that you're targeting, and he kind of, I'm not going to use the word renege, but at that point he decides I don't want to waste your time for your resources for me to come there on a visit. But that was a kind of the trajectory of my early career, from going from a guy that was under the radar, pretty much unknown athlete. And it was a deal where, going to that Nike camp, and they had all the best players in the country that they knew of participating, and I was able to shine.
So with Coach Polinsky, did he transition from Texas to Alabama, and that's one of the reasons also that you ended up in Alabama as far as recruiting was concerned?
That is a major reason.
Okay.
Coach Polinsky
Okay.
left the University of Texas
Okay.
to come to the University of Alabama.
Okay.
And he kept the paper trail. He kept reaching out to me. He kept communicating with me. He kept contacting my high school coach. He stayed very diligent in the recruiting process of reaching out to my small circle of influencers and to myself. And then eventually I came here on a visit, and the rest is history. I went to Tennessee. Don DeVoe was the coach there at that time, and they had a guy that they compared me to. At that time, the marquee player was Dyron Nixon, a guy named Tony White.
Oh, I remember Tony White. Yeah.
One of my favorite NBA players growing up was Bernard King.
Okay.
And I loved the way he played. And I would like to say that was sort of the style. When you turned me loose, that was it. Like, I wasn't going to dribble the ball a lot. It was whatever I was going to do was going to happen real quick to you. Either you're going to raise up with a jump shot, bounce it one time and jump over the top of you, or if I can get close or use my athleticism if I can get a foot in the paint and explode.
So you were talking about Bernard King. So there was a really good stretch or era for SEC basketball from the late 70s all through the 80s and early 90s where there was unbelievable talent that came through the conference. You played at a time where there were many teams that were loaded. So you talked about Coach Smith at Auburn. So you said you didn't take the trip to Auburn? You did not, or you did?
I did not take the trip, even though they had Barkley come through there.
Okay,
they had Chuck Persons come through there. They had some really high-powered guys to come through there to put a definite stamp on the SEC in their program that made you want to, if you were a basketball player back then, the SEC was so dominant with talent, whether it was the Rex Chapmans at Kentucky, the Dwayne Shinches at Florida, the Vernon Maxwells, the Willie Andersons at Georgia. I mean, the Will Purdue's at Vanderbilt. We had Shaquille O'Neal's, the Stanley Robertsons, the Chris Jacksons.
That's right.
I mean, and that's not even to admit the great guys and talent that I had the privilege of playing with on this floor. The Keith Askins, the Robert Ory's, Latrell Sprewells, Marcus Webbs, James Robinson, my point guard, Gary Wake, can never forget him. The guys that came before us, the Mark Godfreys, Derek McKees, the Buck Johnsons, the Reginald Kings. I mean, when you start thinking about Alabama basketball, and even up until the point that Coach Oates had gotten here, right? You'd be hard-pressed if I really told you, outside of Kentucky, you took a look at the history of the SEC, who had a more dominant basketball program in the conference. I know Alabama is a football school, and everybody that came here as a basketball player, we understood that it's a football school, right? Football school that had a good basketball program. But when you take a look at how dominant Coach Rupp and the predecessors were for the University of Kentucky, outside of that program, you'd have to look directly at the University of Alabama when you start talking about the Antonio McDyses, the Jason Caffeys, and the lineage of the guys that came through our program that set giant footprints in the conference and the things that they were able to do and the legacy that we were able to leave and build upon each other's shoulders here at the university. So you bring up a really good point, because I've always said this, and this is one of the things that we try to do with our X account and now with the podcast. Again, there's a new, younger generation of Alabama basketball fans here, given the success of the team and the program in the last 5 years, but they don't know the history of Alabama basketball. They are not familiar with the success that the team had even in the 30s, the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, the championships. And I want your opinion on this. So obviously the biggest thing that always
people used against the University of Alabama as far as getting the respect that they deserve was never been to a Final Four, had SEC championships, had SEC tournament championships, had plenty of players go to the NBA. I think one time second most SEC wins in the conference. But because we never got to the Final Four, I always felt like we never got the recognition that it deserves. So I know that changed this year, but from your perspective, how much did it mean seeing the team get to the Final Four this year for you as a former player and also the program itself?
That was a huge shot in the arm for me and the fraternity of guys that played here before me and alongside me. We have this large group text that
I was going to ask you, do you have a player group text?
We do have a player group text, and you got from the Derek McKees to and then you got some older guys who you just got to talk to them on the phone because
they don't want to text.
Yeah, they don't want to text. You're like, I don't want to text. You got to call me. And so they just like not calling them old, but
I understand.
Time has its place in everything. But it's really exciting when for us, it was always go time when the SEC tournament hit. And in basketball, it's always when you take a look at teams, when are you going to play your best basketball? When will you peak? When are you going to get hot? And Coach Anderson had a way of dividing our season into sections. And he always talked about the different sections of the season, right? You got the regular season, you got a preseason, then you got your regular season, right? Then you got your tournament. Then you have the NCAA tournament. You have your conference tournament. Then it transitions to, you do well. Like the SEC is one of the schools that we always had an automatic bid if you win the tournament. So, that takes all the guesswork out of play as to whether you make the big dance or not. And then it's all about peaking at the right time, because anybody that's ever won a championship will understand that, like, you can lose a game, just don't lose it at the wrong time, right? So, we'd hit the second half of the of our conference season. We'd hit that in stride, and then that'd lead, it's snowballed into the tournament, whereas we were fortunate enough to win 3 consecutive SEC tournaments in a row. And like you said, there were some monsters and some giants in the conference with us. When you start looking at those LSU teams, those Kentucky teams, Florida teams, and we were able to come out on top. And even Tennessee had some players that were pretty hard to deal with back then, as well as Georgia. But, we'd hit that. We hit the ground running with our snowball rolling downhill, hitting that tournament, which springboarded us into the NCAA tournament. And for us, like, March Madness, personally for me, it's my favorite time of the year. It's my absolute favorite time of the year. And, it's funny. I was reading an article where they were talking about the loss of productivity in the workforce that first round of the NCAA tournament. Whereas, they're just getting to the point now where they say, okay, this is the first day of the NCAA tournament. How about let's just shut down and let everybody have that day off?
Take Thursday and Friday off?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's must-see TV. That's that's the best reality TV you can be exposed to.
All right, let me take you back to your freshman year, 87, 88. You're coming in as a freshman to Alabama. Alabama's coming off a dominant year in the SEC, 16-2, SEC regular season and tournament champions. They were expected to have Derek McKee back, but obviously through some other things that didn't happen. And that's only one of 2 years that Coach Sanderson did not make the NCAA tournament. How difficult was it for you that year, your freshman year at Alabama, or was it? How did things go for you as that freshman year?
Well, my freshman year, it was I can't say it was a hard transition from high school, because I came in as a freshman and I started as a freshman. So it's like there was no new learning curve for me, which, later on in my professional career, that became problematic. And I could speak on that later. But coming in as a freshman, I came in, I hit my stride, was able to start, perform well, be a high performing player, that key player for the team. And that was a smooth transition for me as far as playing. However, the losing, I was not accustomed to
Hmm.
the losing part of it, because that's the part where you actually care about the end result. And so I didn't bode well with me with the losing part of it. But the coaching, from the coaching perspective, all I knew was this is a coach I have, and this is the way he coaches. And so practices were really hard, but I thought that was just par for the course. I thought that was just the way things were. I didn't understand that coach had ramped it up based on having so much success the year prior to,
Hmm.
that he was trying to squeeze every ounce out of the lemons that he could get. And so, he coached us hard, and we tried to deliver the goods. And as a result, we had some kids the next year, they didn't return as part of the team. We had some guys that coming in that season, we had some things that, just you couldn't count on. You can't forecast an injury. You don't plan on your point guard Craig Dudley to be playing with one leg, torn meniscus.
Hmm.
We're in the SEC trying to battle and win. You can't count on your recruit Gary Waits coming in. He blows his
He had a
knee
knee
out.
injury. That's
He
right.
blows his
That's
knee
right.
out. So okay, so you have a veteran point guard. You got a backup freshman point guard. So those things you just can't. You can't predict things like that. You couldn't forecast that. So as a result, here we are, uh, going through some growing pains, which I could say it battle tested us later, that put us in those positions those next 3 years to be a dominant team in the SEC.
Well, I would agree because I know that was a very difficult time for the players and for coach. Here's a crazy question. If the transfer portal was as open as it was or it is now back then, what do you think? You think any of those players from the 87, 88 team would have transferred out after 1 year?
Well, I can say this honestly. Like, if you ever had time to sit down and talk with Coach Wimp Sanderson, very smart man, very crafty guy, right? He's a guy that figures out what buttons to push. Like, I can say this. I will never forget when he was recruiting me. Uh, we were sitting at a table at Winsboro High School. It was Coach Sanderson, myself, and my high school coach, and another coach who was pushed, Coach Mercer, who had played at baseball at Louisiana Tech, but he was pushing me hard to go to LSU. He was sitting at that
Oh,
table
okay.
also, right? And my high school coach, James Remedies, he was pretty neutral in the decision-making process. He just like, Melvin, just pick the best school that's going to fit you. And so from my background, I didn't grow up with parental involvement. So I didn't have a father, didn't have parents to chastise, or not that I was a bad kid, but
Hmm.
I wasn't used to like people coming down hard on me.
Okay.
So my biggest concern was, do you curse your players? Coach Anderson looked me straight in my eyes from across the table, and he said, no, I don't. And I will say this from my perspective: for 4 years, he never said a curse word to me in 4 years.
Okay.
Even when I would make a mistake on the court, I was pretty self-correcting, and I could kind of look at him, he'd look at me. He wouldn't say a word, because that was enough to know, like, well, that wasn't right.
Did he give you the scowl? Did you get the scowl?
Well, that was permanent.
Okay.
It wasn't
All
that
right.
he gave it to me. That was,
That's
like,
just
when
the way it was.
that was his go button. When it was
Okay.
game time,
All right.
when he went over and walked over to hype the crowd up, the scowl was already on his face. That was,
Okay.
that was Coach's game
Okay.
face. And so, he was pretty. He was one of those guys that understood, like, to get the most out of him, don't yell at him, and he'll run through a wall for you. Now, there was some other kids that they didn't operate like that. They weren't wired that way. There were some players. There were some players that he had to throw them out of practice. He had to stop practice to get on them really hard.
Okay.
He had to send them right up those steps, back
Oh,
and
right.
up
Oh, well,
those steps, make some
okay.
trips to the top and back till I tell you to stop. And the deal is, he got the results. He got the results that he was looking for.
So, I guess again, one of the best qualities of a coach or a leader is, you're right. You have so many different personalities. You have to know how to handle how one player responds this way, which it may not work for another, and that's a difficult thing. That can be a difficult thing. I know after that year, which was a struggle, then all of a sudden things just took off, and your next 3 years here at Alabama were just lights out. You come back the next year, the 88, 89 year. I'm trying to remember if 88, 89 year was also, because I came to a lot of games too, if that was the year they also started the Plaid and Parquet or the Plaid Palace promotion. But I remember there was a stretch during one of these seasons, I think they had like 7 straight sellouts. Saw a lot of good games here. You go up to Knoxville and you win the SEC tournament. The first SEC tournament that they won, that you were a part of. What did that feel like with that run up in Knoxville?
That was one of those good. That was a really good run because I don't think anybody in the conference saw it happening for us. The leader on that team was Michael Ansley.
Yeah, senior.
He was a senior leader on that team, and Michael's one of those guys that plays. If you watch the current NBA, the Denver Nuggets have a big guy, the Joker.
Oh yeah,
probably jumps 3 inches off the floor. Michael Ansley would struggle to touch the bottom of the rim, but his hands were the strength of his game. It was not his explosiveness, his quickness, his hands. His strength was in his hands, and you'd have guys who could play literally 12 and a half feet above in the air, 6 feet above that white stripe at the top of the square, the painted square on the backboard. They couldn't block his shot because he always understood. He would always tell me, you can't out-jump the ball. You can't. And I was one of those guys who could jump up there and practice, put my wrist above that white square straight up, and I couldn't block his shot. It wasn't until he explained it to me that I was able to block his shot, because then I wouldn't jump. I would just get so close and just stick my hand on top of the ball without jumping. But if you didn't have time to practice that or time it, then it was not going to work out well for you. You'd end up getting in a bunch of foul trouble. But we made that run, and we closed out Florida for that championship game.
The Keith Askins game.
Yeah.
Keith just goes off. In about 2 minutes, what does he hit? Like 4 threes in less than 2 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So did you see that from Keith in practice? Was he a dead-eye shooter in practice?
Keith was a hard worker. He was always a really hard worker, and he had streaks. He had streaks where he was like he was shooting the cover off the basketball that season, that particular season, because he came back his junior year. I don't know, like it could be a millimeter from the ball going in clean or clanking on the rim and not going out. And so but that particular year, his junior year, he was an assassin. He was a flat out assassin, and he was a key part. He was a key part in us having that stretch, that run. And then along that same vein, we had those young guys, Ori, who was just finding his rhythm. Contributors like rebounding, defense in the paint, defensive presence to deter guys from just charging the basket and trying to get easy buckets.
You should have had. I think that year too, the '89 season. That was the first year that David Benoit transferred into the program too, wasn't it? Didn't you have David on that?
That's right. We had a guy named Alvin Lee.
I remember Alvin, great shooter.
Great shooter.
I
mean, he was one of those guys that like shoot the cover off the basketball.
Yep.
And then we had David Benoit that came in, and those guys really helped us immediately get better.
I had summer school with Alvin Lee. I had summer class with him one year. So Alvin sat right behind me. Alvin sat behind me and Marcus Webb sat to my right. So I talked to both of them about basketball that whole summer session. That's all I don't think we got much done. I think we all passed our class, but we talked more basketball than anything else.
We passed the classes. I'm glad we played. Reese Davis probably would be glad to hear that. He's an alumni within the School of Communications. When I originally came here, my original choice to major in was communications.
Oh, okay.
I can still.
Did you have a class with Reese?
Had class with Reese Davis. Yeah.
Okay. Now, so the team rebounds your sophomore year. You win the SEC tournament. Didn't have the results that you won in the NCAA tournament. I remember that against South Alabama. But the next year, to me, and this is my opinion, I don't know how you as the former players or that team feel. To me, the 89-90 team is one of the most underrated teams that in Alabama basketball history. And what I mean by that is that I always felt, because I watched many a game that year, that was one of the best Alabama basketball teams I've ever seen. You guys had a great front line, you, David, and Robert. You had the backcourt with Gary and James. You still had Keith and some of the other players. But the victories that you had your junior year, beat North Carolina here, beat Clemson that won the ACC that year. You beat LSU with Shaquille O'Neal, Stanley Roberts, Chris Jackson. I mean, just tell me, how did you think? What was your opinion of the 89-90 team? I thought it was a great team.
No, I remember when we played Clemson, they had a friend of mine, Dale Davis, on that team, and they had Big Eldon Campbell on that team. And earlier in the season, when we vanquished them, I knew we were different. I knew as a team.
That was in a tournament, wasn't it?
We were in a tournament.
That's right. I remember that.
A tournament
Yep.
at a neutral site. And a matter of fact, that was my first inclination that Robert Horry was going to be a special type of player.
So what did he do in that game that caught your eye against Clemson?
I'd always thought Robert was long and not necessarily the most aggressive player, right? That game, he turned up and he turned aggressive.
Okay.
And I remember once he went baseline and Dale Davis and Eldon both went up to block his dunk, and he flushed both of them. And he flushed on both of them, right? Okay. And at that time, I was like, no, Robert's going to be special. He's going to be different.
Wow.
He's going to be different.
Well, you know, Robert's from Andalusia, and they played in the state tournament up here in Coleman. I watched him play Holt when he was, I think, a junior in high school. So I saw him, and I remember, he was already on the radar as a recruit. But I remember watching him. That was the first time I saw Robert Horry in person. I was like, yeah, I hope he comes to Alabama from what I saw in that game. You go to the SEC tournament, 1990. You win it again, but Coach Sanderson has told me earlier this year that in preparation for the tournament, they put a wrinkle in for you. He wanted to do something special for you. What did he do for you, and what did he see that he thought was going to be effective?
He increased my shot volume.
Oh, he just said, "Get the ball to you."
Well, it's not that he changed a couple of plays to take some other options off the table. Okay. So no, this is going to force you. And when I played here, I was a system guy. Okay. I did what I needed to do to stay on the court, and in our system, it didn't venture me past the 3-point line. It kept me in the paint, right? Okay. But the deal is, and it was funny that you got me and Robert, right? Now, if you post Robert up back to the basket, you were not going to get buckets. If you turned Robert and made him face the basket like a small forward, he made every correct basketball play. When you were open, he threw it to you at the right time to score. Okay. Whereas if you face me, if you give me the ball and I face the basket, all I could do is attack. Okay. I'm either I'm shooting the ball or swinging it, but I'm not facilitating your offense for you. I'm not making a creative pass to an open cutter or a guy that has somebody on his back, right? Whereas Robert could pass the ball and he could facilitate your offense. Okay. And so when Coach did that, what he did was he used us interchangeable, but pretty much, Robert, you play small forward on offense and play power forward on defense. Melvin, you play power forward on offense, and actually going back on defense, whichever one of you guys are closer to the small forward or power forward, you guard them because we guarded the same spots. Okay. But it was a deal where on offense, if you posted me up, there wasn't a guy in the SEC that could guard me when I posted up, because either I was going to turn around and shoot over the top of him or make a move that was explosive and quick and get the shot, a good quality shot off. Whereas when he switched that up and he had Robert, and Robert, he was one of those guys that never got caught up in whether he had 30 or you had 30. If you had 30 and we won, he was happy, genuinely happy for you.
That's great.
So that's a great teammate. He would never withhold making a pass. He always made, and you saw the results of that when he played with the Houston Rockets,
the Spurs, and the Lakers.
And everywhere he went, he was the glue. He was the glue everywhere he won championships, and we joked about that. We joked about his NBA championships. He said my teammates called me Big Dog. He would say, "Dog, don't forget about the 3 we won in college." So.
Well, again, as we talk about that 89-90 team, again, to me personally, one of my favorite Alabama teams ever, just because I thought it was just a talented, defensive, I mean, just a great team overall. Again, I remember put a beat down on LSU here with Stanley Roberts, Shaquille O'Neal, and Chris Jackson. So you win the SEC tournament, and I remember the NCAA selection show, and they say Alabama's the number 7 seed going to the West, and I'm like, what? No respect whatsoever. You roll through the tournament, you have these great regular season wins, and it's no better than a 7 seed. Did Coach use that as some motivation when you guys went out west?
No, he didn't.
Oh, he didn't?
No, he didn't. It was just, it was just business as usual.
Okay.
Like, who's next?
Okay.
That's what it was.
All right.
It was who's next. And I want to say we ran up on, was it Arizona?
You beat Arizona in the second round when they were the number 2 seed, and you just drilled them.
Yeah.
You guys just crushed them. You had them out of the game by halftime.
Yep.
So let me ask about that. When you were going in against Arizona, which was the number 2 seed in the West, again, anything special on that one, or was there a quiet confidence among the team that this is no big deal? We played against LSU; their front court's bigger. I'm not worried about Arizona.
No, we didn't look at it that way. We just looked like who's next?
Okay,
like who's next? Like, I don't care what your number is, you just happen to be next. Like, you put your shoes on, we put our shoes on. Put your shorts on, we put our shorts on. Let's roll the ball out there. Let's see what we got.
Well, I remember watching that game on television, and like I said, that was an incredible performance by the whole team. So you upset number 2. Now you're in the Sweet 16. This is your first Sweet 16 because the year before you lost in the first round.
That was disappointing.
Yeah. Loyola, the team that scored over 100 points in 28 games, was averaging like 125 points, had ran Michigan out of the gym. What were your thoughts on that game and the preparation for that? Because you had almost a week to prepare it. Because I think either on a Sunday or Saturday, and then you played Loyola either on a Thursday or Friday. Yeah. What were your thoughts going into that game after watching them on tape and seeing what they did?
Watching them on tape, the consensus amongst the players, Loyola has no business being on the court with us.
Okay.
And we just based that on the fact that they had one Greyhound, Bo Kimball. We had 6 Greyhounds. we had at least 5 guys that were interchangeable defensively. That the same system that we used when Chris Jackson came here right after he scored 50 points, he showed up here and scored 9 points.
I remember that.
And all we did was unleash 6'8", 6'7", 6'9" Dobermans that as soon as he comes off a screen, switch hard in his face, contest his jump shot in his face. And so you got Bo Kimball, who was not a better scorer than Chris Jackson. I think at that time he shot more. He was a bigger volume shooter, but he was not a better scorer than Chris Jackson. And so the consensus of the team was, this is who we want. This is a matchup we want. And then I think we kind of got ahead of ourselves because we just knew we were going to vanquish them, and we were looking forward to the matchup. The matchup we really wanted to get to was UNLV, because everybody kept talking about Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon, George Ackles. But if you that same team that you're talking about, if you lay it down on paper and compare it, that would have been a beautiful game. Just before, statistically and athletically, when you looked at all the matchups across the front line, backcourt, that was as the players as we were talking about it, that was a game that we were looking forward to. But we have to handle Loyola. And, the strategy that we use is slow the ball down, deny the inbounds pass, keep the game a low-scoring game. And we kept it a low-scoring game. Didn't work out for us. I think I took our last shot with a couple of seconds on the clock. Robert, long inbounds pass, and Robert found me, which I knew he would. And I turned around and I quick shot, I think an 8-foot turnaround jump shot, quick shot at trying to beat the buzzer, which really I had time to get a clean shot off. But we came up short, and it was a very memorable game.
That was a tough one for a lot of folks. That one really hurt because I agree with you, because I know you were talking about, and you know what, now that you really look at the lineups, if you look at the players that UNLV had and what your team had, you're right. And we talked about this earlier. It's all about matchups. You're right. I never really thought about it, but Alabama would have been a difficult matchup for UNLV just because of the players that you come out there. But yeah, that one hurt. I know that one. That one still today. I still think about what could have been because I really thought your team, your junior team, could have easily gotten to the Final Four.
That team, well, I mean, with some work, but that team, we were primed to, and I'm not pointing any fingers, but like history is a history.
Mm-hmm.
And an opportunity sometimes only present themselves one time, as we talked about that earlier. That basketball, and any time you line it up, is who's the best right now, right here. That's like 10 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, I would beat you playing one-on-one.
No, you beat me 10 out of 10.
But there's a time that on this particular time, that's the time you win, right? So
I know for Alabama fans in general, that's the one thing that it makes the NCAA tournament great, but it also is so frustrating because of all those just the one time, because Alabama was always knocking on the door with great teams and either a matchup problem, a team just matched up well, even though they probably weren't the better team, not the most talented. It's just their night. Those were always so frustrating. After that year, you come back again, you have another good season. You win the SEC tournament yet again, so that's 3 straight for you. So you've got 3 SEC tournament championship rings. That's pretty impressive. But do you ever just stop to think about what you accomplished? The fact that you were in not a repeat, but a three-peat for tournament championships.
I really didn't reflect on that till we had that 30-year reunion, and then we had the next 30-year reunion. Yeah. And then we had the next 30-year reunion. So it was back to back. No, well, then one of them got delayed because COVID.
Okay.
And so then we put that a year after that. But it was one of those deals where, after time passes and you got a chance to reflect on accomplishments, that's when it's more significant. When you're young and you're thinking about things, you never realize things will be your last opportunity, last time to put your sneakers on, step on the court. You take things for granted. But it's when you look at the whole body of work and you sum it up, and you reflect on it, and you realize, wow, man, it's really special. And then, you see the guys, and you're laughing, and you're joking, and, reminiscing. It's just, it's just good times.
So one of the things that was always significant to me, and it really didn't hit me until 2021, but, I was in school. I lived through all the teams that you played on. You won the championship in 91, against Tennessee at Vanderbilt for the SEC tournament. I never would imagine, Melvin, it would have taken 30 years for Alabama to win the SEC tournament again. I had become so accustomed to seeing the team either in the final or win the tournament. And then just think, 30 years passed before Alabama basketball won the SEC tournament again. They didn't win it again until 2021. You were a part of the last team to win that tournament until 2021. And that just blew my mind because that's not what I grew up on. That's not what I was used to. And I didn't even realize how much time had passed until the 21 team won it. And I was fortunate enough to be up in Bridgestone with my daughter for that. And after they won it, I thought about it. I got to tell you, the emotion hit me. I really started crying because I couldn't, it was hard for me to just think about, I've gone 30 years before this would happen again. I never thought this would be the case. So it's a testament to the teams that you had, that you were a part of, that you guys did it 3 times in a row. I mean, again, to me, that's very impressive. After your senior year, after, again, another Sweet 16, if I remember, ran into Arkansas. I think that was a tough Arkansas team in the Sweet 16.
That's right.
And again, Arkansas, very similar to an Alabama-type team, kind of similar fast-paced style, good athletes. And I know that was a tough one.
They had a suffocating defense.
40 minutes of hell, yeah.
And they had Lee Mayberry, Todd Day, Oliver Miller, and a couple of guys that came back later to win that championship, Scotty Thurman.
Oh, Scotty Thurman, that's right.
Scotty Thurman and Corliss Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And the significance of that particular game was our starting point guard, Gary Waits, had the flu.
I didn't realize that.
He didn't play.
Okay.
And so they had a guard named, I want to say his name was Avery Boyd. He was the defensive player of the year in their conference. That was prior to Arkansas coming to the SEC.
That's right. That was the last year. That's right.
And he was an aggressive on-ball defender. And, Coach Nolan Richardson preached his 40 minutes of hell where they would pick you up from baseline to baseline.
Yep.
And he would literally, that kid literally sat on our backup point guard, Marcus Jones, so hard that Marcus had to take the ball and put it in his right hand and back the kid up just to get it across the half-court line and beat the 10-second count. And by that time, he pushed him to one side of the floor so hard that he could not run our offense. Like they dictated what we did offensively because we couldn't decide what we wanted to do. You didn't have a choice. He would push him so hard to his right side, and he couldn't. He didn't have the ability to reverse the ball or swing it to the other side, and that's pretty much shut our offense down.
I had forgotten that Gary didn't play that game. So that's a huge blow, obviously.
That was a huge blow with Gary Woods. Gary's a guy that came in and broke Terry Connor's assist records here at the university.
I completely forgot about that. Let me ask this then. So, your senior year, like I said, so now when you look back, we already talked about you got 3 SEC tournament championships, you got 3 NCAA tournament appearances, you got 2 Sweet 16s. Now, after that, again, also you were all SEC your senior year, by the way, too. If I remember correctly, I've got it right here. Your senior year, you averaged 16.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, and you're first team all SEC. So, as you look back at the 4 years, I would say a very successful career at Alabama. Fun times, great memories. What was it like after that Arkansas loss and you thought, wow, that was a quick 4 years, wasn't it?
Well, I didn't look at it from that standpoint. I felt, with my skill set that I have the ability to continue playing after college. And so, I knew that wasn't the end of the road for my playing career. But, you want to go out on your shield as a competitor, as a champion. But you understand in most sports, there's only going to be one champion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to the Sweet 16, you got to understand that there were a bunch of other teams that would have traded their first round loss.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. They would have traded their second round loss to be there. There were some teams that didn't get into the tournament that would have traded that to be where we were. So, you can't lose the sight of the gratitude of the experience, of the success that we did have, even in the midst that you lost. At the end of the day, even the team that finished second for the national championship, they still didn't win. They were a little deeper than everybody else, but they still did not get crowned champion.
So I wanted to, the one area I don't have as much information I wanted to ask you about. So your post-career at Alabama, I know you played overseas. You did that. Now, how many years did you play? Did you play in the EuroLeague? 10. Okay, so
10 years overseas.
10 years there. Now, where were some of the countries that you ended up playing in your professional career?
I played in Greece.
Okay.
I played in Spain. I played in France, and I played part of the season in Istanbul, Turkey, later in my career.
So, what was that experience like, as opposed to what you're used to here in the United States? Here playing in the SEC.
When you watch guys like the Joker play, Tony Kukoc play, Drazen Petrovic play.
I remember Drazen. Played for the Nets.
Divac play. You watch the Dallas Mavericks play. They got a guy number 77 that plays extremely European, 100% European.
So I was going to say, how different is the European game to the American game?
It's totally different. Whereas the American game was always built on athleticism and explosiveness, whereas I was fortunate to have a Yugoslavian coach my first year. And as a result, he turned me loose. He literally turned me loose, and I averaged over 30 points a game, had 50-point games. He literally, every aspect of my athletic ability and offensive ability, he literally turned me loose. He turned me loose. And he slowed me down. Just teaching you fundamentals of basketball, things that, growing up, you think, if I could jump higher and run faster, that'll make me better. That's not the case. Sometimes it's about the timing, like how to use the ball screen correctly, how to come off this screen, your footwork, figuring out the defense. What is this guy trying to take away from you so I can get you in foul trouble for trying to take it away from me? So I had a couple of Yugoslavian coaches who, well, one was Serbian, and then the next one was a Croatian, but they were their aspect and the way they look at the game is totally different than anything that I'd been exposed to, and the weapon. I'd like to describe it as they totally weaponized me as a basketball player.
So they unlocked all the skills.
Yeah, like you understand, when I came out of high school, I was averaging 29 points a game. My junior year, I averaged 29.3. My senior year was like 29.6 per game in high school without a three-point line.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And we didn't have a three-point line. And then when I came here, I may have shot 10 three-pointers. But if you check my stats in Europe, I was a shooter.
Okay.
I was a shooter, and so not necessarily I was a shooter before I was a scorer. And when I went to Europe and they unleashed, and it was just so, for me, it was so much fun to be in a system where I got this weapon, I'm building my offense around this weapon, and I'm just turning them loose. And it just was up to me to deliver the goods, and I did my best to do it every game and had fun doing it.
So you had a great experience then playing in the EuroLeague.
I had an incredible experience.
So we talked to Richard Hendricks last week, and he was talking about his experience too. So one of the things I didn't realize, he was talking about over there, you basically played 2 games a week, so you have more time to practice. So you practice more than the games that you play, which is the total opposite of what they play in the NBA, where you play more games than you practice. So, and there's, I guess, a different thing that they focus on. He also mentioned the crazy environments, that when you go to opponent's arena, it's nothing like we experience over here in the States.
It's like if you watch, like I live in Austin, Texas, right? So we have an MLS team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to the soccer matches, that is the atmosphere that I had home and away
For basketball.
playing basketball. And it was, and the root Latin word fanatic,
Mm-hmm.
fanatics, right? And that's really like they were fanatics for their home team, man. It was funny. Like I would never forget when I first went to Greece, and they were smoking cigarettes in the stands, and I walked in the gym for tip off. I look around, I saw the haze in the top of the ceiling. I said, "What's going on?" They said, "Get used to it."
Oh.
And so then they'd have the flares. You playing, and you look around, and somebody, they got they ole ole ole. They got the flares snapped, and they lighting them up in the stands. And I'm like trying to play the game and not get caught up looking at the fans celebrating. But it was a wonderful experience. It was and my oldest son, Miles, he was born in Athens, Greece.
Oh, wow.
My oldest daughter, Alexis, she was conceived while we were in Spain, but we came home to Austin. She was born in Austin, so she does not have that dual citizenship like Miles has. And then I have a younger one, Maya, who's a purpose. Actually, that's how you caught me in Tuscaloosa today.
Oh, for the volleyball.
Yeah, she's here at the volleyball camp.
Okay.
Over there. Hopefully she's doing her thing, and she's not as tall as her sister Alexis, but she kind of there's times she looks like me when she puts her foot in the ground and she goes up.
So with that type of environment in the EuroLeague, with all the craziness going in the stands, so I guess it's no wonder that the European players, when they come over here, it's not a big deal for them to win road games. That's probably a tame environment from what they were experienced in the time that they played over in Europe.
Listen, you can't compare the two. I mean, it's nothing like, I don't care about the yelling. I mean, like, it's just it's totally different environment. I mean, when you're at home and your fans are celebrating and cheering, and it's just over the top, but it's contagious to the team. Sometimes the question is raised whether should the players make the fans cheer, or should the fans cheer for the players? Sometimes when things aren't going well for a team,
Mm-hmm.
and you just don't have it, sometimes you get that energy from your fans when they start, one little spark, and then they get roused and they get loud, and you can hear them and you can feel their energy. And so when you're over there, it's just a whole different energy when you're competing.
So speaking of home crowds, and here we are, and again, special thanks to Stephen Gonzalez and the Sports Information Department for letting us come in here and do this podcast. As you look around at Coleman, facility that's been here a long time. They just announced the new addition for the player and training development. So pretty apparent Coleman's not going anywhere anytime soon. What are your thoughts about Coleman in here? You should have a lot of good memories here.
We got a lot of good memories, man. A lot of sweat, a lot of equity in this, and like I would like to believe and feel that, it's not about one player. It's the whole sum of us all, the whole body of all the legacy that we all had from whether it's a written Obasahan or, just the players along the journey that we all wore this crimson. We all share that brotherhood. We share that bond on this journey. And, I'm all for improving the facilities. If somebody else has it, well, why shouldn't we have it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the University of Alabama. We are Bama. And I'm a strong advocate. I am always an ambassador for the program. Whenever I have an opportunity to speak about my experience here, I speak favorably. And it's not that I have to make this stuff up or generate it fictitiously. It's all facts, and sometimes I tell stories about my experiences here, and people just feel like they're too good to be true. When you talk about the talent, the guys that we played together, and and I'm not a guy that will go pull out the pictures or the books to prove things. Sometimes I just keep it to myself because I feel like I don't have to prove it. The people that need to know already know.
Well, like I said, we have a similar point of reference for the history of Alabama basketball, and I agree. I mean, I saw it. I mean, I started watching Alabama basketball when I was 12 with Enos Watley and those teams that Coach Sanderson had all the way up.
And they went up to UCLA and won at Pollard Pavilion. Yep.
So a great tradition, a great history, so many great players that have come through here. I mean, a lot of great players. How often do you get to come back here? I know you're here today for your daughter, but how many times have you been able to come back to Coleman, to the campus here, maybe in the last 10, 15 years?
I try to get here at least one basketball game per season.
Okay.
Try to catch one football game per season.
Well, now that since you live in Austin, and now that Oklahoma and Texas have come into the league, Alabama should be coming out to Austin at least every other year.
Yeah, we should. I got to get reconnected closely to the basketball program now.
Yeah.
I drifted away. We went through some transitions of coaches and things changing. Hopefully now we're set where we need to be for the long haul. I think financially they addressed any issues that may arise with Coach Oates. I think he brings a brand of basketball that's fun to watch and to play, which is, to me, the most important part is he has a brand of basketball that is fun to play, which makes kids want to be a part of this. When you watch Alabama play, and, I can tell you, like, there's not a kid anywhere in high school that wants a coach to tell him, stop shooting or don't shoot, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, because at the end of the day, I will always tell you, a coach can never give a kid confidence, but they can take it from you. They can take it from you. So the way he coaches and the way he lets guys play and the way he develops, I didn't get a chance to meet him when we had that last reunion. I had to run back to the airport in Birmingham and pick my family up that was coming in after me. But I was watching the practices and the shooting drills that they were doing before the game, and the kids were having fun. You were doing a thing that you love. You were doing your job, the reason that you're here. But they were actually having a great time on that court, shooting, and and that's what it's all about. Like, enjoy what you do, love what you do.
So you talked about the former player group text that you guys send out. What were some of the messages going on during this last NCAA tournament run?
The biggest expression is roll tide.
Okay, all right.
Roll tide.
So let me ask this. Was there any point, because I never saw it coming, and I go to all the home games, I go to the SEC tournament, I was there in Nashville when we had that really bad loss to Florida. But you already called it. Florida is just a bad matchup for Alabama last year, the way they were. So that was a tough draw. And I wasn't surprised that Alabama lost because I agree with you from the matchup standpoint. But then I never saw coming what they did when they went out west. Was it after? Let me ask you this: after the North Carolina game, after they pulled that one out and won, did you start thinking they might get to the Final Four at that point?
I felt the way they played, they could win the national championship. And the reason I say that is because as dynamic as the offense is, the defense wins championships, okay. But if you got no offense, what can you win?
That's true.
That's like saying, okay, you're going to save money, but you got to make some money for it to matter, right? So with that offense, it's just, like old expression, live by the sword, die by the sword, right? But if that sword is cutting, you don't have a chance. Like those guys, when they're hitting on all cylinders offensively, they can beat anybody in the country, right? And there was always, things that people would like to see the players do, or there's always room for improvement in any aspect of basketball. There's always things that we could do better or want for more. I mean, like if I had to instruct a young kid to start getting ready to become a player, I'll tell them, well, you can never shoot it good enough. You can never handle the ball good enough. Take those two things and work on them every day, because you can never do it good enough. And I would watch those guys practice, and I noticed the emphasis was on shooting the ball, right? Because that's pretty important. Like, at the end of the day, that's what we count to decide who wins or loses, right? We count to look up at the scoreboard and says, okay, you got the lead, you won.
So, and I agree. So this past season in particular, so many critics, were just laying in Alabama because their defensive efficiency rating. Oh, you're in the hundreds. Ken Palm says this. And they never gave any credence or gave any light to how good they were on offense.
Exactly.
And there were some games, I agree, when they were on, that team would beat anybody. Yes. It didn't matter. And I had no problem with the fact that I wanted them to lean into the offense even more, because you knew what you were, no need. You already understand that you're not going to be a great defensive team, but you are an elite offense. So why not take advantage of what you have?
And I'll tell you this, and in any sport, good offense will always beat great defense. Always. Okay. If you're playing good offense, you can have a great defense. You're probably going to still lose that game.
You got to score.
You got to score.
You got to score.
You got to put the ball in the basket.
Yeah.
You can have a great defense and a horrible offense. I'd like to say, I like my freshman year, we couldn't put the ball in the basket. We couldn't get 5 guys who could get us could score in double digits. I mean, we had maybe 1 or 2 guys we can get double figures for you, coach, but we didn't have 5 guys that could go out there and get double digit scores in the books for you. But you had 5 guys who dive on the floor. You had 5 guys who hustle for a rebound. You got 5 guys that'll take a charge or try to block a shot. But that didn't translate into victories, because at the end of the day, when you start thinking about our offensive output, that next year it changed. Like with some Alvin Lees, David Benoit's, Michael Ansley growing up, we started having offensive output
that match the defense
that showed up on the scoreboard, and as a result, we won that championship against Florida when nobody expected us to win it.
Well, let me just kind of ask this last question. So now, with the program on a renaissance, and for me, I always considered the 80s the gold standard. 80s and 90s is the gold standard, because there were great players in the SEC. Alabama had a great run of success, but after that dry spell Alabama went through of like 12 years that we talked about earlier, what does it mean to you as a former player to see your alma mater finally come back from the dead and be relevant, not just at the SEC level? Now they're relevant at the national level with all the buzz and everything else that's going on with this program.
I would like to say, I read an article the other day where Alabama preseason right now, we're ranked number 1.
In some
polls have
yes,
us
that's
ranked
correct.
number one.
They are.
They have us ranked number one. Well, as an alumni, as a fan, it makes me feel really good in March when I don't care whether I'm in Austin, Texas, or if you're in Sacramento, California. If you got an attachment to the Crimson, you got it on the first game of March Madness, right? And so you don't want to roll into a sports bar with all your buddies or somebody's house with all your friends gathered around. They got on all their gear. You don't get to wear yours because you're not invited. You're not invited to the tournament.
I
right?
remember those dark days.
Yeah.
2013, not a single state school in the whole state of Alabama made the NCAA
Yeah.
tournament. That was a terrible year.
Yeah, so so it's just more fun. I mean, you want to root for your school. You want to see your school in the big dance. Whether it's not only just basketball. You root for the football team, you root for the golf team, gymnastics, baseball, softball. I mean, for an ex-athlete, it's unilateral where all sports.
Mm-hmm.
Like Justin Thomas. I want him. Come on, man. Let's go get us a major. Let's go win one, man.
Yeah.
Let's win one.
So obviously here at the University of Alabama, like you said, known football school. And believe me, I love the football team too. I love all Alabama sports. But again, I have always felt there has always been a very strong core and passionate fan base for basketball. And there always will be. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to see the enthusiasm and excitement come back. When's the last time that you could even think that Alabama basketball would dominate the sports media in May and June? When fans are calling into the radio shows worried about basketball recruits, not football recruits, basketball recruits. They want to know about, are we going to get this 5-star? Are we going to get this transfer? What are the preseason rankings? It's just been, I don't ever remember anything like this. Even with those great teams in the 80s and 90s, to have this carryover all the way into summer as summer approaches. So I think that's a great thing. I mean, it's a good thing for all programs here. We want all programs at the university to be like that. So again, Melvin, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. This has been outstanding.
Thank you.
And again, I hope you get to come back to as many games as possible. I can't remember. I think Alabama does play at Texas this year too, so you definitely need to. Alabama will be outnumbered in Austin, so you need to go out there and support Alabama for that game.
To make that happen, but and to that point that you were talking about, the fan base concerned with the recruiting. We're dealing with new animals now.
Yes,
we're
that's
dealing
true.
with what's called the transfer portal,
NIL,
NIL money, and now guys are making business decisions, and truly. It's not always that is the only mind that you have to convince, because they have their board of directors, whether it's a mother, uncle, coach, AAU coach, brother. They got their board of directors that's sounding off in their ears and in their head to what they should do. And so now it like the landscape can change so quickly. We had two of our high-profile players that fans were sitting on pins and needles on. Are they going? They're going to enter the NBA draft, or are they coming back? And then, that's not the only caveat you have to deal with. You have to deal with we lost a really good guy to the transfer portal, right? Yep. So now is this thing just a wild, wild west where everybody's just basing it on a monetary business decision, and as opposed to legacy and loyalty and happiness. I understand money, capitalism drives everything, but at the end of the day, as a fan, as a spectator, it's more fun for me when we can have those fun predictions on this team should be pretty good based on these three guys played a lot last year and they're coming back. Not that and granted, I understand the scope that we're dealing with, that the things have changed now. It's but back when we played, we knew my junior year that coming back, we're going to have a pretty good team my senior year, right? We were adding James Hollywood Robinson, and that was a critical piece for us. And we felt like, okay, we're going to be right back knocking at that door again next year. Whereas now, you don't know what's going to happen. A guy takes off, has a great season. Is he going pro?
Yep.
Is another school going to outbid you for its services? So, just keeping all that in mind, it puts me in a perspective where I appreciate the moment.
Well, I can definitely say, Melvin, you and some of your teammates, you're like the last of a generation where you played 4 years for one school. Started as freshmen, finished as seniors, because that's not the norm now. And you're right. That is one thing that I truly miss, that I always enjoyed about the program, because I loved seeing the development of the players from freshman to sophomore to junior. Now, if they're really good, okay, they may leave after their junior year, but at least you had 3 years with them. But I always enjoyed seeing the players go from freshman to senior, and then now, it's a different animal. It's roster management. So expect 50% turnover every year. You're going to learn all new players, all new numbers year after year. So that's definitely changed. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to go back to the old way. So that's one of the things from a nostalgia standpoint that I miss, because I really enjoyed the connection of the players, because you really felt like you got to know players that have been here 3 to 4 years. So that's you and I, two old guys sitting there lamenting about the way the new generation is, but it is what it is on that one.
We just have to adapt.
Yep. Again, Melvin, a pleasure. This is the first chance I've got to meet you in person. I really appreciate you agreeing to come on and doing this for us. This has been a blast. Maybe you can reach out to some of your friends in the group text to say if they're ever in town to look me up too. We can do some more podcasts.
Yeah, no.
All right. Thank you, Melvin.
Michael, thank you.
No,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.